I'm Kaylee, and these are the books that I read in October. I had kind of a mixed bag of reading in October. Some books that I really, really loved, some books that I actually DNF'd, and a few that were just kind of in between. I read a total of 12 books in October, plus 2 books that I read at least up to page 50, and then I DNF'd. So it's 14 books, but 2 of those were DNFs, so I read 12. I read 2 classics, 2 mysteries, 3 middle grade, 3 nonfiction, and 2 fantasy books, and then I DNF'd 2 books. Before we dive in, make sure that you subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up if you had a great reading month in October. And follow me over on Storygraph and Goodreads and all the places. So the 2 DNFs were both books from my Wrapped Books challenge. One of those was Oscar Wilde and a Game Called Murder. So this is where Oscar Wilde and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and people that they knew, in real life are all involved in a murder mystery. I don't know why I even had this in my Wrapped Books. Like, what made me pick this up? What made me ever think that this would be something that I would like? I really don't know. I read up to page 83 and I DNF'd it and it was really, really not for me. And the other DNF was a book called The Turquoise. So this is about a girl who is orphaned in Santa Fe, and she gets a chance to run away with a traveling magician. But this Navajo medicine man warns her not to run off with this guy, but she does it anyway, and she gets into trouble. So this one, I made it to page 118 before I DNF'd it. It was really kind of gross. It was just very weird and creepy, and it was just like nasty. So yeah, I was glad to DNF that one for sure. The books that I really, really loved this month reading were, of course, the classics that I read for Victober. So I'm still right in the middle of Paul Faber-Surgeon by George MacDonald, so I will be talking about that later on. I think I'm about halfway through or so. I am really, really enjoying it. George MacDonald is just such a genius, and I'm loving all the characters and everything. This is the second book after Thomas Wingfold Curate. So Paul Faber was a side character in the first book, and now he's kind of the main focus in this second book, and then there's also a third book in this trilogy. I'm really glad that I decided to read the original version of this, because it has been modernized in a different edition where it's been edited down and the language has been updated to be more modern language and more modern sentence structure. But then you just lose the whole flavor, that Victorian flavor of George MacDonald. If you don't have that complex sentence structure and just the way that they express themselves, it's like, this doesn't even feel like George MacDonald. So I'm really glad that I decided to read the original and not read that updated version. And I read Anthony Trollope's Can You Forgive Her, which is the first book in the Palliser series, and oh my goodness, that was the star of Victober this year for sure. I listened to it on audiobook, narrated by Timothy West, and I really, really loved it. It just really enhanced the story to hear all the different characters' voices and everything. I've already done a whole nother video all about my in-depth thoughts about Can You Forgive Her and Anthony Trollope and Plantagenet Palliser. So I will link that in the description. Be sure to go over and watch that video to hear all the reasons why I gave Can You Forgive Her 5 stars, because I loved it so much. And I also read Raffles the Amateur Cracksman, which is the first book in the Raffles series. This one was actually the pick for our book club, which we have never done before in my book club. We usually don't all read the same book. We read whatever we want, and then we come together and just talk about what we've been reading. So this is the first time in 5 years that my book club has actually picked a book to read together and then come together at book club and talk about it. This is my second time reading Raffles, and of course I just love Raffles so much. So it's kind of the counterpoint to Sherlock Holmes. It has that Sherlock Holmesian kind of style, but Raffles is a thief. He's a gentleman thief, and it's just all kind of adventures and fun, and it's just so wonderful. So Raffles has his own kind of sidekick like Watson, but his sidekick is named Bunny. That's his nickname. And Bunny is sort of that bumbling, doesn't know what's going on character. And we see everything through Bunny's eyes. So we don't know what's going on either until the big reveal, the twist at the end of the story. I always give Raffles 5 stars. I just love it so much. I also read a few books that were sort of Halloween themed or autumn themed in some way. I read Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie, and I've already done a whole nother video all about Death on the Nile because this is a Poirot mystery, and I absolutely adore Poirot. So I'll leave a link to that video in the description. I also read The Mystery of Black Hollow Lane, and I loved it so much that I immediately bought the second book, and I'm going to be reading that second book sometime in the next couple of months. And I read The Giant Pumpkin Suite, which is about a girl who plays the cello, and she's just completely obsessed with the cello, and her twin brother is obsessed with growing a giant pumpkin. And my other Halloween book was The Black Market, which is about this secret black market that is only open on Halloween where you can trade for magical items. So I will leave a link in the description to all of those Halloween and autumn themed videos so you can go over and see all my thoughts about those. I also continued reading the Dragon Keeper Chronicles. The third book is DragonKnight. In the first 2 books of the series, we follow Kale, but in this third book in the series, we follow Kale's friend, Barden. Kale does join in the story later on, but in the beginning, we just follow Barden and his adventures. So he's trying to make a decision about whether or not he wants to become a Knight of Paladin, and he gets swept up in a quest to assist this old granny to find her missing son, a knight who has been cursed with a sleeping spell. I just love this whole series so much. This third book was really, really good. I gave it 5 stars. The magic and the dragons and the quests are just so perfect, but the best part of this series are all of the spiritual themes. There's a lot of Christian parallels and Christian wisdom that runs through the book. There's just such a depth, such a beauty to the writing. I am just loving this series so much, and I cannot wait to dive into books 4 and 5 in the next couple of months. Continuing my series goals, I also read the third book in the Trials of Apollo series, The Burning Maze. Now, I had already been spoiled for a particular character death in this book, so I knew it was coming, and it was still so heartbreaking, and I was like bawling and screaming at the book and just like ugly cry, you know. It was not pretty, okay? Even though like I knew it was coming, I was still just in denial. And I think the worst thing was seeing how the other characters react and their grief over this character's death. And it's like one of my favorite characters too. So I just, this one was very emotional. It was really, really tough reading this one. So in this one, Apollo and Grover and Meg are navigating through the burning maze. So they have to figure out some kind of magical artifact or just something that will help them to get through the maze to rescue the oracle that has been imprisoned there. As always, the adventure is really exciting. I just love the hilarious narration from Apollo's perspective. Although, as we go through the series, Apollo is getting more and more serious, and there's less of the silliness and the sass and the sarcasm and everything. So it's really lovely to see that character development and that growth from Apollo. I gave this book 4 stars, and now that I'm kind of past the point where I know the horrible character death happens, I'm eager to just get on to books 4 and 5 and just continue on and finish up this series. I also read Elizabeth Elliot's The Liberty of Obedience. This is a short little book. I think it's only like 70 pages or something. And it was so packed full of wisdom. It was really, really good. So if you know the story of Elizabeth Elliot, she went to live with the Aucas native tribe. And while she was living with them, it made her think more carefully about how we interpret Christian morality and how we kind of live out the principles of Christianity that are found in the Bible. So for example, if the Bible says, not to be conformed to this world, what does that look like? Like, what does it mean to conform to the world? What kind of behaviors or what kind of things actually, define worldliness that we should avoid? And so she started asking herself, well, what does worldliness look like to an Auca native tribesman? I really love that this book just takes away the whole concept of culture and social expectations, and it gets down to the very bare bones of what Christianity is really all about. What does it really mean to be virtuous? What does it really mean to serve God and to discern between good and evil? We should be getting our answers straight from the Bible and not from other people's expectations of what that should look like. I really love this book because it explores ways to apply biblical truths into your life in any culture, in any context. And the result is just simple joy. I gave this book 5 stars. I just felt like there was such good wisdom in there. I also finished reading John Wesley's How to Pray. This compilation brings together little snippets of John Wesley's writing and some of his sermons on the subject of prayer. So each page has a devotional for the day along with a Bible verse to reflect on. Some of the paragraphs are obviously taken like from the middle of a sermon or something, and so it's a little bit out of context. It might be a little difficult to follow, like I feel like something's missing here, you know. But for the most part, each page has a complete thought. I found that although I agree with Wesley's main principles, I don't always agree with his application of those principles. It's like the main biblical truth about prayer or, you know, whatever it is yes, that's good, but the way that he applies it is sometimes very extreme. And it's like, I don't think that's not the way to do that. So it kind of dovetailed perfectly with the liberty of obedience, which was like, we don't go to these extreme measures. Whereas John Wesley was taking these biblical truths and applying them in extreme ways based on his culture and his time period in history, the liberty of obedience was all about not doing that. So it was kind of interesting that I ended up reading those back to back. So How to Pray ended up being a little bit of a lesson in what not to do. I enjoyed some of the thoughts on prayer, and others just did not speak to me personally, or I just didn't disagree with the application, but I still enjoyed it, and I gave it 3 stars. The rest of the books in this video are books that I received for free from a publisher in exchange for a free and honest review. So I finished up reading the Witchlings series with Scepter of Memories. So in this one, the 3 friends, Seven, Thorn, and Valley, are devastated when an evil warlock uses memory hexes to erase the memories of the townsfolk, and sometimes even erasing the memories of their own families. But they hear a prophecy from hundreds of years ago that could lead to a magical scepter, which has the power to restore memories, and the prophecy leads them out into the wastelands, beyond the 12 towns, where monsters abound. I just love the magical adventure, the mystery. I love the humorous writing style and all the great character growth. However, there were a few places where I felt like the writing could have been a little bit better. There were a few scenes that were just like a little bit cheesy, kind of corny or obvious or something. There are quite a lot of LGBTQ characters in this 4th book of the series. Valley is in a lesbian dating relationship, and Thorn is giving hints that she might have a crush on another girl. This book has been screened on the Screen It First website, so I will leave a link in the description where you can check it out on the website to see if there is any sensitive content or minor violence that might not be appropriate for young children. I ended up giving Scepter of Memories 3 stars. And I also finished reading From Plato to Christ, How Platonic Thought Shaped the Christian Faith. So I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was very interesting. I've already done a whole nother video about this book, and I'll link it in the description so you can go over and hear all my thoughts about Plato. And I'm excited to dive into the next book, which is From Aristotle to Christ. So I'll be reading that in November as part of Nonfiction November. So I've got more wonderful Greek philosophy to dive into in the next month or so. And those are all the books that I read in October. Please leave me a comment and let me know, what are some books that you've been reading recently? What did you read for Victober, and did you enjoy it? Did you read anything special for Halloween? Like, did you read a spooky book or a mystery or something specifically to be for Halloween? And what are you planning on reading for Nonfiction November? I feel like this time of year, it's all the readathons and the holidays and everything. So there's just so much good reading going on this time of year. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.